Hi, this is Carlos with House of Tennis, and in this video we will cover drills to improve all different type of volleys. We will cover absorbing volleys when the incoming ball is hit with power, and we will also cover creating volleys when the incoming ball gives us more time. Now, the technique of all different type of volleys are different, but they share some technical and tactical fundamentals. Let's begin with explaining directional volleys, which is a tactical component that we will use for all the incoming drills. When the incoming ball comes with power, we will ask the players to hit directional volleys. This means that when the ball happens to be close to the volleyer, the natural direction of the volley should go cross court. However, when the incoming ball comes with power far away from the volleyer, we will ask the players to follow the natural path of their body momentum in order to achieve a successful directional volley. Finally, when the incoming ball comes with less pace or less rhythm, we will allow the players to have the option of choosing to hit a directional or non-directional volley, since it's a lot easier for the volley to shift their body position to hit a non-directional volley when the incoming ball has very little pace. It is very important to let the players know that this is not a rule. It's just a guideline that allows the player to understand basic tactical fundamentals when hitting volleys. Some of the technical fundamentals for all volleys are using the continental grip, where your index fingers and the base of the palm of your hand are on bevel number 2 of the grip. Also, having a solid ready position where we ask the players to keep the knees bent, the weight should be supported on their toes with the racket above the grip level. The dominant hand should be using the continental grip and the non-dominant hand should be on the neck of the racket. Finally, remind the player to have a solid split step when their opponent makes contact with the ball, in order to allow the player to react and shift their weight in either direction. Feed balls high and soft close to the player and have the player around the service line. This is a great opportunity to work on a cross-court angle directional volley, where the focus should be on freeing up the legs to get up to the ball and avoid to let the ball settle. Then have the player focusing on a solid load with the outside leg pressing the ground, and finally have the player stepping in with the inside leg during contact with the racket on an edge in order to create a short cross-court angle. Feed balls soft and high away from the player and position the student on the opposite side where you will be feeding the ball. This allows the player to work on a firm high drive directional volley. It is important to free up the legs to avoid to let the ball settle as well, and low with the outside leg to create a good leverage. We also want to address the importance of timing the inside leg with the contact while maintaining a solid directional volley following the path of the body. Allow the player to extend the follow through on this volley in order to create more power on it. Position the player in the middle of the service box and feed balls with a lot of pace close to the player. Have the player focusing on a solid base where the hands are above the net and the elbows are out and in front. Have the player adding the weight on the outside thigh during the contact, and a very compact swing is necessary since this is an absorbing volley where the natural direction of the volley should be cross court. Position the player in the middle of the service box and feed balls with power away from the player. Have the player focusing on a good solid outside leg load and have the player pushing off the ground in a forward diagonal in order to cut the angles. Finally, have the player placing the volley in the same direction where the body is moving with a short and compact swing. Position the player in the middle of the service box and feed low soft balls close to the player, and have the player focus on attacking the ball moving forward in an angle to avoid the ball getting lower than necessary. Then have the player loading with the outside leg and step in a diagonal with the inside leg during contact. It is very important to remind the player to keep the back knee bent and the upper body straight. Have the player relaxing the hands on contact by moving the racket head face slightly forward during contact in order to add a bit of undercut to the ball. The natural direction of the drop volley when it's close to the player should be cross court. Position the player in the middle of the service box and feed balls low and soft beneath the net far away from the player. Have the player focusing on getting behind the ball with balance where the knees are bent and the upper body stays straight. Remind the player to place the volley in the natural direction of where the body leads. Position the player a couple of feet behind the baseline. Then have the player move forward and pause or split step when the coach makes contact with the ball. Have the player loading by shifting the weight to the outside leg in order to use the ground force to push forward. Then use the opposite leg or inside leg to proceed forward by synchronizing their footwork with their volley contact. Create good separation with the legs in order to give good power and an aggressive intent to your transition volley. Remind the player to stay true to the natural direction in which the player should be placing the volley. If the ball is close to the player, take the ball cross court. However, if the passing shot stretches the volleyer, keep the same path of the body momentum. Have the player starting a couple of feet behind the service line. Remind the player to move forward and add a split step when the coach makes contact with the ball. Mix up the rhythm of the feet and have the player focusing on staying directional on the transition volley. Then, have the player following the path of the transition volley and give the player a live ball to work on their closing volley. This will help the player to make a choice between a creating or absorbing volley. Remind the player that if the incoming ball comes with power, the volleyer should always stay directional. However, if the incoming ball or the passing shot is soft, remind the player that he has the choice of going either way. Have the player starting a couple of feet behind the service line and the coach on the service line on the opposite side of the court. The player will hit a transition volley back to the coach and work on a closing volley hit live by the coach. This will force the player to keep their feet alive since the incoming ball from the coach travels at a less distance. Have the player focusing on the proper direction and type of closing volley that should be best executed based on the incoming ball. Both players and coaches should be positioned in the middle of the service box where the main objective should be to check the player's posture, continental grip, split step timing, and racket position. It is very important for the coach to implement a pace or rhythm that allows the player to time the volley properly in order to achieve a continuous control and proper technique. This is another variation for the volley drill where the main objective should be to focus on the shoulder alignments and body posture in order for the player to find success hitting natural directional volleys on the outside volley and non-directional volleys when you find yourself hitting inside volleys. On the do side, the directional volleys when two right-handed players are doing the drill would be the forehand volley and the non-directional volley would be the backhand. On the outside, the directional volley would be the backhand volley and the non-directional volley would be the forehand volley. This drill allows the player to work on creating pace and rhythm with the legs since the distance of the ball travels longer. Have the players focusing on loading by shifting their weight to the outside leg in order to use the ground to push forward. Then use the opposite leg or inside leg to step forward during contact by creating good separation between both legs, where the main objective will be to create pace with the legs. This drill allows the players to work on directional and non-directional volleys. The objective of this drill is to position both players in opposite corners of the service line and have them working on hitting volleys while moving across the service line until both players find themselves on the opposite side of the court. This allows both players to work on creating volleys with directional and non-directional volleys while they track their partner's positioning on the opposite side. Have both players working on creating volleys from three-quarters court. This is a great way to improve creating volleys using the legs to find the ideal power to let the volley travel at a long distance with good rhythm. This drill would allow both players to work on their half volleys as well. It's very important to remind the players to reset back after each volley to focus on a strong base. Do this drill on both do's and outsides, working on directional and non-directional volleys. Have both players starting at three-quarters court on opposite sides and have them working on transitioning forward while they exchange volleys. The goal on this drill is to recognize creating versus absorbing volleys. The further back the players find themselves, the more they need to create with the legs in order to get enough punch on the volley. Now, once that the players find themselves closer to the net, it becomes more of a reaction drill when absorbing and keeping a compact swing is necessary in order to achieve success on the volley. Have the players playing the point out, going at each other until somebody misses, and then have them reset back to three-quarters court. This is a great drill to work on volleys when the ground strokes come with power. Have the volleyers working on directional volleys when the incoming ball comes with power, and give them the choice to go non-directional if they have more time. Remind the volleyer to focus on keeping the hands above the net with a solid base.